Welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast, a podcast where we break down our stories and our trauma, understanding how they have impacted our career and our life. This is a place where we break free from shame, own our truth, and step into our power, one story at a time. Hi, I'm Kim, an adoptee, a former foster youth, hairstylist, salon owner, breast cancer, and complex trauma survivor. So join us, pull up a chair, in this no sugarcoating, no holding back, honest conversation about healing and success. Well, welcome, my friends. Welcome to episode 2 of the Survivor's Chair podcast. And if I'm going to be totally honest with you, because that's what we're doing here, it's that I have to laugh because I thought I was putting up my edited version of my first episode, and apparently it wasn't the edited version. This is such a learning process for me, and it's fun. And like I said, this isn't about perfection. I don't care that it wasn't the edited version of it. Somebody told me once, and it has stuck with me forever. You teach to who's in the room. It doesn't matter if there's one person in there or 100 people in there. The people in there are the ones that want to hear what you have to say, need to hear what you have to say. So that's what I remind myself. This is not about gazillion followers, and social media is like that too. It's not about followers. It's not about likes. It's not about that. It's who needs to hear the message. And I just hope that they're there. So I'm learning. I'm growing. This is all new territory for me. I'm okay with that. The perfection thing, the drive to perceived perfect, afraid to make a mistake, is just another response to feeling like you just don't live up to other people, and you're trying to reach people's expectations. That can happen in abusive relationships, friendships, parents, and so on and so on. But it's usually some kind of trauma response, that quest for perfection. I remember when, at a time in my life, I couldn't be wrong. Even if I didn't know what the heck I was talking about, I just didn't want to be wrong. It would sit in me knowing that I didn't have the answer, and I hated that about myself. And let me tell you, I'm so far away from that now, which thank God. So I thought on this second episode, if this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kim, and we're here to talk about trauma. We're here to break it all down and release the shame and release the power of our stories, which sometimes can be so intense. I'm here to share my experiences because that's what I can speak on. I'm looking forward to getting other people on here to share their experiences. I think the more we share a story, the more people don't feel alone, and the more we heal together. Every time I tell my story, I remember the first time I told my story, and oh my gosh, I was like shaking, crying. I skipped over so many pieces of it. And every time I've told my story since then, I feel a little bit lighter, a little bit brighter, a little bit more of a release of that weight. It just helps you live your life a little bit freer and more peaceful when you can accept your story. So I'm going to share some of my story today and some key points in my life that got me to where I am and why I struggled so much. And let me tell you, this is just a small snippet, which is why I had to write a book, which hopefully is going to be done soon. I will let you know when it is, that's for sure. Because there's just so much to my story. There's so many different things, which is why I talk about myself being a complex trauma survivor. I'll say it again. PTSD is usually a one-off kind of trauma. If you got into a car accident or something of the sort, it's just a one-off trauma. And complex trauma is multiple traumas over and over and over again. And that's pretty much what my life was like. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me. I'm going to tell you about the real me. I want you to get to know the real me. I want you to get to know the one who struggled most of her life. I want you to get to know the person who never felt worthy of anything, happiness, success, especially not love. I want you to get to know the person who strived to be such a good person so no one would see the ugly inside of me. I want you to see the person who used comedy and laughter as a way to deflect my emotions. I want you to know the person who longed to be liked, even just a little bit, just a morsel, despite the sacrifices I had to make to get those morsels. I want you to get to know the person that overgave, overgave in gifts, overgave in time, in hopes to be liked, wanted, needed. I want you to also get to know the person who kept her mouth shut, didn't say a word, didn't share emotions, didn't feel emotions. I didn't want to upset anybody. Never told a soul I was mad. I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Honestly, I could go on, but I'm going to share my story and let you know how I got to some of those places in my life. You can hear paper. It's because I wrote everything down. I'm trying to be organized. Another challenge. So I'm going to start at the beginning. And the beginning pretty much is at the age of 11 months old, just shy of my first birthday. I was abandoned in a car. And people are really quick to say, oh, you were so little, you don't remember that. Oh, thank God you were so young, you don't remember that. Well, I'm going to challenge you on that because maybe I don't have images of memory, but when you read my book, you'll understand it when I talk about emotional memories. And I talk about how all of these memories, these feelings are stored inside your body because the body does keep the score. I describe these emotional memories as these little trauma chips that are scattered throughout my body. At any time, they can come to the surface, and I don't really know what they mean. I just know what they feel like. So when our bodies have these responses like a stomach ache, a headache, an anxiety attack, or we're over or under eating, we're controlling, we're binge drinking, we're doing drugs, we're gambling, we're having sex with strangers, anything to feel good. These feelings, these little chips, I call them, in our body that are trying to sort them out. All of those tools that I just said, we use those to stay away from those feelings in our body. But our body is always trying to give us signals and we don't pay enough attention to it. So I'm going to get to this, this major emotional feeling that I had. And that is, sitting in the back seat of that car. And what I felt in the back seat of that car, and I describe it in my book as me standing on the back seat on my tippy toes, trying to see out the window. My knuckles are clutching the thread on the seat, and I'm crying. My eyes are darting around, and I don't know how long I've been there, but it doesn't feel right. And waiting for somebody to come back. Why hasn't anybody come back? Like, these are the feelings I have in my body, which are no question to me that they are real. I buried those feelings in my subconscious and in my body for years, and they're still there. They're still there. And how I know the difference now is when there's a normal fear, something I am supposed to be afraid of, something, there's a dog chasing me down the street that's barking with his teeth out. I know to be afraid of that. That's a true fear. The not real fears are the fears of people leaving or abandoning me or not liking me or fear of the night. I talk about that in my book, which I'm not going to cover that here. There's so much I'm going to cover once my book is out. That backseat of that car was a pivotal moment of abandonment, loss, fear, and confusion that shaped my life, shaped who I was at that age. How could I be worthy of anything if my own mother discarded me. That was the feeling that I grew up with. Like, obviously, I was garbage. I was worthless. Because why would your own mother abandon you? There's more on that as time goes on, and I promise I'll cover that some more. But I just want to get to these little pieces in my life that were shape shifting, shall we say. When I talk about my biological mother, usually you can ask any adoptee. The first question we get asked is, "Have you ever met your mother? Do you want to meet her? Don't you want to see if you look like her? Don't you want to see if you talk like her?" No, most of us don't. I never did. And that's not the most important piece of our story as adoptees. The most important piece of our story is how unworthy of love we feel, how abandoned we feel, how our loyalty is next level because we're so afraid to lose people, even though we should. A lot of people get hung up on the TV versions of adoption, the glittery reunion stories, the happily ever afters. That's not really how it happens in the adopted world. I mean, yes, there are some beautiful stories and they're great. It's kind of a unicorn. When you talk to most adoptees that have decided to seek out their biological parents or their biological family, they're still left with that feeling of why? Why did you abandon me? Why didn't you want me? Why? Um, so there's so much in the adoption community around loss and grief and fear and sadness and pain, and we don't talk about it enough. I'd love for other adoptees to chime in and tell me their experiences and their stories. But what I've known over the years after talking to many adoptees is that most of us feel pretty much the same, although our experiences are very different. We feel the same. All right, so I'm gonna kind of fast forward from the back seat of the car to when I was 5 years old, and in between those years, those 4 years, I lived in absolute fear. I was so afraid of being swept away or discarded or alone. I typically would sleep under my sibling's bed, or I would sleep in his closet because I couldn't bear being alone. I was so afraid. And now I mention my sibling, my brother, who is, yes, my 100% biological brother. You will not hear me tell his story. This is not my story to tell at all. This is his story. We have taken separate paths over the years, and I respect how he chooses to deal or not deal with stuff. And it's just not my story to tell. So you won't hear much about him other than that. After I was left in that car, I mean, I don't know how long I was there. I don't know who came for us. I don't know any of that. But we were placed in emergency foster care when somebody finally did come. And the adoption took 4 years. And from what I understand, they were waiting for my biological parents to give up their parental rights. Everything I've heard about my life has been hearsay. You just don't know what's true, what's not true. So that's what I go with. So adoption time has come. And this is something I really struggle with when I see on social media and I see these kids and they're holding a sign and they're saying, kind of like my gotcha day, like a puppy. And if you look in the background, the family's smiling and they're all happy. And the kid always has this kind of dark look on their face, because they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand what's happening. And there's not enough trauma educated people out there to help these kids sort out these feelings and get them to talk about what's going on. I'm hoping that's going to change. I mean, it is getting better, but back when I was young, there was none of that. We had a couple of adoption books that we read through. I don't even remember them, but it was very weird. I remember that. So it's adoption time, and I am in the courthouse. And this courthouse, this feels really big. It feels really scary. I don't understand it. I don't know what's happening. I'm 5. All I know is I don't feel safe, and I'm really scared. That's all I know. And these people felt big and powerful, and I just it didn't feel safe. There was a lot of people in there, and I'm afraid that everyone is there to figure out or decide what to do with me. Because in my mind, nobody wants me, right? Maybe they don't want me anymore. What did I do wrong? I'm thinking, how can I be better? Like a better child. These are thoughts of a scared 5-year-old. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And people will say, oh, you don't remember stuff like that. Yes, yes, we do. And it's interesting because 5 is a pivotal time in a child's life. I'll get into that when I get into the brain and how the brain develops and all of those things. But I remember the man in the robe, the big scary man in the robe that was staring me like dead in the eyes. And then he said to me, Kimberly, do you want to live with Jan and Fred forever? And that's what I called my foster parents, Jan and Fred. That's who they were. And that was another confusing thing. Now I had to call them mom and dad, and I had to have a different name, and nothing felt right. I felt like I was being stripped away of anything before 5 years old. And never mind that I don't have any pictures of myself before a year old. So that feels like I didn't exist. I can't really imagine being in the womb, being born. I don't have any pictures of me existing before that time. Even though I know it's true, I did exist. I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, what if I what if I say the wrong thing? What's going to happen? Like where would I eat? Where would I sleep? What would I do? Would I be alone?" And these are thoughts of a traumatized child. All you can think about is surviving. All you can think about is getting your basic needs met. You don't care about anything else. And then what if I say yes? And then they don't want me. Then what do I do? What if I say no? And then they're mad at me and they don't like me. These thoughts were racing in my head as a 5-year-old, panicked. So I thought for a few more minutes before I answered, and I remember saying a very, very quiet yes. And then the whole room cheered and was happy. And, I was like, oh, phew, I made the right I made the right choice. I said the right thing. Most of us who have been traumatized as children, all we ever really worry about is our basic needs because at some point in our life, they've been stripped away or manipulated or used as a tool or a tactic to kind of like keep us in line. Don't do that. You're not going to get supper. All of those stupid things people said to us. But anyways, I was really happy that the whole place was cheering and I was relieved and I didn't have to go out onto the street. I was like, whew, everybody was happy. And it was in that moment that I learned as long as I can keep everyone happy, I might be safe and maybe I wouldn't be abandoned again. These were the thoughts of a 5-year-old. And at that moment, I became the absolute ultimate people pleaser. It didn't matter what sacrifices I had to make or the feelings that I had to stuff down or make them go away. As long as everyone around me was happy, then maybe I wouldn't be abandoned. Maybe I was likable. Not that I believe that. So I'm definitely going to skip some things because there's a lot. And I'm going to wait for the book to come out. And I just want to focus on these pivotal moments that changed me and why I was suffering so much. So now I'm going to fast forward to 11. And this is when I discovered drugs. I was already stealing cigarettes out of my grandmother's ashtray and smoking those. And at this point, this is when some friends and we bought some hash. I don't know what money. It must have been lunch money. I have no idea. On the way to school in the 7th grade, we made a bowl out of an apple and we smoked that hash. How did we learn how to do that? We didn't have Google. We didn't have YouTube. I have no idea. What happened then is we started smoking a lot. I started smoking a lot of pot before school, during school, after school. I liked the way it made me feel. I was numb. I wanted more. So as time went on, shortly after that, I discovered the drug mescaline. I was about 12 years old, and if you don't know what mescaline is, it's a psychedelic drug, and they had 3 different kinds. Back in the day, it was purple microdot, orange sunshine, and chocolate chip. Fun little names for a drug. I'm sure some of you can relate to that are listening, that are my friends. This, for some reason, this sounds really crazy, but that was my favorite drug. I loved that drug. And I loved that drug because it allowed me to escape. But not only did it allow me to escape, but it numbed me perfectly. And at the same time, what this drug did was make you laugh for 8 hours. 8 hours straight, all you did was laugh. That was like a dream for me. I wanted to feel that way all the time. So I continued to take mescaline before school, during school, after school, on the weekends. I was a 12-year-old at the roller skating rink taking mescaline. I was taking that 3, 4, at least times a week just to feel good. I don't know where I got the money. It must have been lunch money. The sad part about that is as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, I was going into the inner city and knocking on doors and buying these drugs. And I remember the guy coming to the door with the big giant like mayonnaise jar back in the day, like a restaurant mayonnaise jar filled with pills. And I think I got 3 for $5, if I remember correctly. The mescaline days died off a little bit when I got to high school. It wasn't available to get it. And I was drinking like a fish. And the other thing that came along was speed. I also had another friend that was in school that would bring another mayonnaise jar full of black beauties to school. And I would buy a bunch of those and I would take speed all day in school. And it didn't matter. If somebody handed me a pill, I took it and asked questions afterwards. I had a friend that would pick me up before school and we would drink all the way to school. Sometimes we'd make it to school, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we'd come in at lunch. Sometimes we left at lunch. Sometimes we'd come back. Sometimes we didn't. I snuck booze in my locker and I would drink and take speed in the girls' bathroom in the middle of the day. And then soon after that, then came cocaine. And that was the next drug of choice. I honestly think if anybody knew what I was doing at that time in my life, they probably would have tossed me into rehab. And do I think I had an addiction problem? No, I don't. I think I had a numbing problem. I had an escape problem. And to this day, I will always say, trauma is the gateway drug. Trauma is the thing that starts it out. Trauma is the thing that we're running from, we're hiding, we're escaping, we're getting away from. So at this point, I'm 15, 16 years old, and cocaine gets introduced to me. Again, I don't know where we got the money for it, but we did. I wasn't crazy about cocaine, but it did the trick. It was like a next level drug, and I was always looking for that next stronger thing because eventually things would wear off and they didn't work as well. And I would feel, and I didn't want to feel. So I was drinking every day. Didn't matter. When nights, weekends, mornings, didn't matter. Anything I could get my hands on, I did that for years. I'm also I'm skipping some parts, again, like I said, because there's more to come in the book, and that's your little teaser. I'm gonna wait for it to come out before I talk about some things, so you're just gonna have to keep posted and stay in the loop. So, I'm 17. I am with my high school boyfriend and 2 other friends. I don't know how we got there, but we are in a cabin in the middle of the woods in New Hampshire. And these other 2 people that we were with, they were older. They were a year older. They were cooler, more popular than me. I felt privileged because I was there, and I was like, "Geez, maybe they like me. I better just keep doing whatever so that they like me." I felt really insecure and small around them, and I really wanted to fit in. And these friends came to this cabin with 2 8 balls of cocaine. I had never seen that much cocaine before in my life. And what I saw next, I had never seen either. And they got out the spoon, they got out the lighter, and I think there was a little bit of water involved, if I remember correctly, but I don't know. And they heated that spoon up until that cocaine turned into a hard ball, otherwise known as crack cocaine. I knew nothing about that. I knew nothing about addiction. I just knew nothing about that stuff. We had a Sprite bottle that we fixed again to use as a bowl. Amazing how we figured those things out as kids. And we passed that Sprite bottle around until all of that crack cocaine was gone. They showed me how to do it. They told me how to blow all the air out of my lungs and breathe in long and hard to get all that crack cocaine into my lungs and into my body. I did what they said, and I had no sense of self to do anything different. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be numb. It wasn't all about that. So this was just another way to numb. And surprisingly enough, we all made it through the night. How? I just don't know. That was a lot of cocaine for 4 people. And I remembered I wanted to go to bed. And I had this insane feeling that I had to get all the air out of my lungs at all times. And I just kept blowing the air out of my lungs. It was really, really weird. I wanted to go to bed and I just wanted it to be over. And the odd part about that is I never touched cocaine again. And I never touched drugs again after that night. And I know you're thinking like, "Oh, you smartened up, Kim, and you realized that, that wasn't a good thing." And no, that was not the reason why I stopped doing drugs. The reason why I stopped doing it was because it felt so good. That euphoric feeling that I had from smoking that crack cocaine was so intense that I knew if I did that again, I probably wouldn't stop doing it because I would be chasing that feeling of goodness that I felt, which was crazy. So I'm 18 and I never touched it again. And then on my 19th birthday, I had somebody give me a pack of cocaine for my birthday. Very excited. Happy birthday. And I handed it back to them and I said, "You know what? I'm kind of high on life. I don't really need this anymore." They were shocked. They were like, "Huh, okay, that's weird." And I don't know, how can I say why I did that, why I felt that way? I'm not really sure. The only thing that I can connect it to was when I was 18, we were allowed to get our non-identifying information from the state. You could not do it before 18. So when I was adopted in 1974, all records were sealed. Your birth certificate was changed. You erased everything you were before the time that you were adopted. And I won't even get into the conversations that weren't had when I was growing up because they were awkward and uncomfortable and you just didn't talk about it. And as an adoptee, you didn't want to talk about it because you were afraid you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. So that's, again, another podcast. We'll cover that. But the only thing that I can think of in that time is getting this little bit of information, that had the social workers' notes on there because they had to come and do house visits. And they talked about how happy I was and how much energy I had, which, isn't a lie and still true. And I think that was just peeling just a little bit of the layer off for me. And that's what really started my healing process. So when I look back at it, I didn't know it at the time. And I didn't need those drugs anymore. I just didn't want them. Like I said, I feel like that just peeled a little bit off and I was ready. I was letting just a little bit of my feelings in, and it wasn't much. Not enough that I didn't need alcohol, but I did continue to drink, heavily, 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 heavily until my 40s. And then I slowed down in my 40s. And honestly, I haven't had a drink since my breast cancer diagnosis in September of 2023. And that's been a really interesting journey and another layer of crap to go through, because it's kind of forced me to look at my relationship with alcohol. And it's forced me to look at, to this day still, that when I have uncomfortable feelings coming up or something that really doesn't feel good, I would like to reach for that drink, which is what I did, but I can't anymore. I have to feel all the crap, which is hard. And sometimes, I'm not going to lie, I just grab a box of cereal and go for something crunchy. I'm not going to lie. I'm not perfect by any means, but it's been an interesting thing to think about the how and why, the role that alcohol has played in my life. And again, that's a whole other podcast. I told you I have a lot to say. It's going to be really busy. But at the same time, do I ever think I was an addict? I really, really, really don't. I really don't. I think drugs and alcohol were my medicine. They were my medicine that made everything go away. Some people take prescription drugs. I didn't take prescription drugs. I did a little bit for a little while. Again, another podcast. I'll get into that. But I truly believe that trauma is the gateway drug. Without some kind of trauma, most of us would have never stopped drinking, doing drugs, numbing, having risky behavior, all of that. This is only a little bit of my story. This is pretty much my numbing years story. And I think maybe you can begin to understand why I am where I am and where it stemmed from the beginning, which was the first 5 years of my life. After that, there was a lot of different things. My adoptive parents were not equipped to take care of traumatized children. They had their own set of crap that they came in with. That's the thing that happens that I would like to change. When you are a traumatized kid and you don't do the work and you don't sort it all out, all you become is an adult with childhood trauma. So you're carrying that around with you. It's making it into your relationships. It's making it into your friendships. It's making it into your business. It's making it into your career, but finds a way to seep in everywhere. I think the best part for me is knowing that things can get better. I didn't know it at the time, but things get better. And we all have the power in us to change. It sometimes takes looking at some really hard stuff and can be overwhelming. And you don't know where to start. And maybe listening to this podcast is just your start, and that's fine. I have a lot of book recommendations. I have podcast recommendations. Those will come too. These are things that changed my life. My mission through all this, part of it, is to help people, especially foster youth, because that's near and dear to my heart. It's really any child that has suffered through the hands of trauma. to just not wait so long to sort it out. Don't wait so long. And, find that peace and happiness at 25 instead of 55 and have all of that time filled with joy and peace and happiness. I said in the last podcast too, and part of it is telling people this isn't who you are. There's so much more than your story. I want to help people erase the shame of their story because when again, this is just a little part of my story, but I don't get into the things that I did during those times either that created so much shame, and I was embarrassed and whatever. And I know now that I did those things to survive. I have so many moments in my life that I'm not proud of, or people that I've hurt along the way. And it was my survival tactic. It wasn't me. That was my trauma. I was protecting myself in any way that I could. If you hurt me, I was going to hurt you 10 times more because it just hurt too much. If I wanted to be loved, I was going to do whatever it took to be or feel loved, even though it was an empty love. And this was the story that I believed was that I just wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy, I wasn't lovable, all of those things. But now I give myself forgiveness, grace, and love every single day. Because all I knew back in the day was how to survive. But now I know different. I don't have to just survive. I can live. So thank you. Thank you all for being here for episode 2. I hope you feel like you know me a little bit better. And remember, we're so much more than our stories and what happened to us. And please feel free to reach out on social media. You can email me. You can go to my website, www.kimrussellpro.com, and you can email me through there, or it's info@kimrussellpro.com. That's my email address. You can reach out on social. If you want to get on my email list, I have slacked, obviously, in the last couple years. I've been, kind of busy fighting this breast cancer thing, but now that we're on the other side, I'm going to get back to doing all the things. So if you're not on my email list, hop on that. And exciting things are coming. I can just feel it. I'm humbled and grateful by the people who have already reached out and are following and listening and sharing. And I just can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. I love you guys, and I will see you on episode 3. I can't thank you enough for listening and supporting the Survivor's Chair podcast. You can read my blogs, get on my email list, follow me on social. Just head over to my website at kimrussellpro.com. That's www.kimrussellpro.com. If you loved what you heard and you want more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and download. It really helps us reach other people. Sending so much love and healing your way, and we'll see you next time on the Survivor's Chair.